Hi everybody, I'm Audrey Moore with Audrey Helps Actors, and this is episode number 59. Feeling so fine in your quarantine about Self-Tape May! Woo! Self-Tape May! Applause sound! Eruptions! Cheers out of control! OMG, it's Self-Tape May time. We're going to talk all about what we're doing for Self-Tape May this month, your instructions, so I know you weren't being cheater pumpkin eaters and are doing it actually now during May. We have a wonderful guest on today, Francesca Decker. She's a physician certified in California and in New York, and we're going to talk about the COVID virus because she is also a working actress. And so we're going to talk about the virus, all the things that are complicated about it, and getting back to work. I know everyone wants to know about getting back to work, and she reached out to me, and I thought this was the perfect person to have a discussion about what this virus is and then what that means in terms of resuming production. And then what we can do in the meantime is something that you and I are going to have a little chat about. So this is going to be fun. I also want to express my profound gratitude for everyone. Thank you so much. All of your sweet messages. I guess I must have sounded like really tired and broken in the last episode because I had a lot of people reach out and were like, hey, you okay, girl? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. Like, because you sound like you need help. So thank you for all of your kind messages. And also thank you for all of your iTunes reviews. You guys, you've been giving me so many incredible iTunes reviews. And I want you to know, when you give me iTunes reviews, it's like waking up in the morning and checking my phone and seeing a bunch of news notifications that they have cured COVID-19. All of us are able to resume work immediately. And also, I've been offered a series from Netflix. That's how your iTunes reviews make me feel. Special shout out to Shay Rosemart, Anna Carolina Friere, Prime Gibb, Campo Bella Ash, Leslie K. 1977, PMFU, and Abe 315. Thanks so much, you guys, for your iTunes reviews. That's really amazing. I said iTunes. It's fine. It's all there. iTunes reviews. Okay, let's get into Self-Tape May. All right, so here are your instructions for Self-Tape May. Self-Tape May begins May 1st. Okay, so if you want to have a private Instagram account because you don't want everyone up in your audition business, that's great. You just have to let me know so I can follow you back. So you just have to be like, hey, Audrey, here's a little message for you. This is my self-tape account. Follow me. I am looking for 16 total tapes. 1-6. That's 16 in total. 1-6 finished, completed self-tapes by the end of May. They begin on May 1st. If you post before May 1st, I will know that you're a cheater pumpkin eater. This year, we are not doing the safety pin. No safety pin. If you've been doing a safety pin all year so you could post a bunch, so you could win, wrong! You cheater. This year, you're going to take a piece of tape. I don't care what kind of tape. It can be Scotch tape. It can be washi tape. It can be gaffer tape. It can be painter's tape. It can be clear tape. It can be double-sided tape. Now, if I cannot see your tape clearly in your self-tape, please, before you do your self-tape, just do a little point. Like some of you last year would just like hold up your safety pin and then put it down and then do your self-tape. That's acceptable. If you want to just point to the tape on your body, that's acceptable. So I'm looking for a tape on you for your self-tape for Self-Tape May. We are doing market-specific research this time. That's our focus for Self-Tape May. So I encourage you, this is not a steadfast rule, no one's going to imprison you for otherwise, but I encourage you to do self-tapes for shows shooting and filming in your market. So if in your Los Angeles, look at shows that are shooting in LA. If you're in New Mexico, look at shows shooting in the Southwest. If you're in Atlanta, look at shows shooting in the South, okay? You get it. You get geography. Okay. Then I want 16 total. I don't care if they're short. I don't care if they're long. I don't care if you do them all in one day. I don't care if you space them out. But I would love it if you had a market specific and you let me know what market you're in. So hashtag self-tape May is how I'm going to find you. Also, if you will hashtag the location and market that you're doing, that would also be fantastic. Some of you might have a resume that is above local casting, so you might be in a position where you could be flown around the world. And if there are shows that you think that you are right for that are not in your market and you want to work on those, please work on those. For those of you who maybe don't have a resume but have a casting that say you are 22 and you speak 3 languages and you went to med school, then maybe you would be really great for a medical show, even though it shoots outside of your market. And I'm fine with you working on those sides. Listen, work on whatever sides you want. This is up for you. I only suggest that this be a market-focused self-tape May. It's deliberate practice, you guys. We are deliberately practicing our market research for this self-tape May. Okay, now I also want to do a little public service announcement. I've already done this on Instagram, but I'm going to do this here for all of those of you who aren't following me on Instagram. B2W, follow me on Instagram, Audrey Helps Actors. Okay, some people have been sending me, there are people out there who are doing like self-tape contests where you like pay money to participate in a self-tape contest, and then if you win like $100 or something. And my personal point of view on that is that I don't know that that is the best thing for you to be doing with your $10 right now, $5, whatever it is. I started Self-Tape May because generally in May, actors are very depressed and sad because it's a slow time of the year. There are no commercials shooting. There's no film really happening, and there is no television happening. And so it's a great time to work on your craft. And also it's something that you can do from your own home, which is perfect right now because that's where we're all at, is in our own home. And I particularly like this self-tape practice because it is affordable. It's something you can do relatively inexpensively. And I think if we're going to spend money on self-tape practice, I think a good way for you to be spending money on your self-tape practice is to be doing private coaching, maybe with somebody that is reputable, that you have worked with, an acting teacher, an acting coach that you trust, somebody who has a proven track record in excellence in that department, doing a casting director workshop. I don't want to tell you how to spend your money. To me, those sort of competitions, they sound a little bit fishy, is what I will say. So if I were you, I would maybe encourage you to spend that money, getting a CBS All Access pass for a month and watching all the shows that aren't available on Hulu or any of those because they're locked down by CBS, or watching shows in your market, downloading some books on Audible that you really are interested in, saving your money up for a workshop, and working and doing a self-tape for and with a casting director and building a relationship in that direction. I am all for people helping actors and charging money for their time. I just hope that the people that are charging you for your time are giving you something valuable in return. Okay, that's my preach. Sorry about that, but I love you, and this is a really great episode. I'm super excited. This episode is brought to you by Brad Greenquist and Whitney Euland. That's Brad Greenquist, who is a fantastic coach. And if you wanted to work on self-tapes with somebody, I definitely recommend Brad. And Whitney Euland, who is a life coach for Abundant Artist Coaching, who has a great little service for actors, especially during this time, to offer that I will tell you more about later in the podcast. All right, I know you're not on your way to an audition, but I hope that you are practicing and getting ready for Self-Tape May.
Audrey helps actors because they don't know anything.
Hi, everybody. I'm Audrey Moore with Audrey Helps Actors, and today we have
I'm Francesca Decker.
Hi, Francesca. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing very well here in quarantine. Now, Francesca, just so everyone knows, is a physician as well as an actress. And when the quarantine went down, she's going to tell you a little bit more about her qualifications. But when when it went down, I was doing these episodes about what was happening and trying to keep people with as much information as I could give people. And she reached out so generously to offer her medical expertise to the podcast. And I jumped at the opportunity. I feel like you're a really perfect person to have on this podcast as somebody who has both experienced professional sets and what that looks like, and then also is entrenched in the research and knowledge of what COVID-19 is and how and why those two things combined add a lot of complications, we'll say, and risks.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can clarify for people what COVID-19 is and isn't. And that's just up-to-date information as we have today, Saturday, April 25th, 2020, right? And what that means in terms of public health and safety for the workers of our industry.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so tell everybody a little bit about yourself. First, tell them a little bit about yourself as a physician, and then a little bit about yourself as an actress.
Okay. I am a board certified family doctor. I'm currently licensed in New York and California, but I have not practiced in about 2 years because I decided to move to LA to pursue acting. I was also, I did my undergrad at Cornell. I went to SUNY Downstate in Brooklyn for medical school, and then University of Rochester, where I was a chief resident. I also did a master's in public health while I was in medical school.
Great.
So I've done a lot of work around understanding a problem medically, understanding and reading the research, and then trying to figure out solutions for problems that are going on. Yeah.
And then as an actress, you've been in LA for a couple of years. You have worked on professional sets where there is, the amount of people that it takes and levels of crews. So you're aware of, I would say, the many varied sides and scale of what film and television production really looks like.
Yes, and also a lot of smaller, less professional productions. And I think there's some important stuff to say about that as well, because there's a real risk of people being taken advantage of right now who are in that end of the field.
I just want to preach hallelujah to what you just said, because I think this is the most susceptible group where we as union actors, safety is a top priority, if not the top priority. And one of the things that you really get into with non-union work is that the care and safety of those involved is not looked after and protected in the way that it is when you are a union professional. And so we will definitely get into, the beware, the non-union world in a way that will put your health and safety at risk. And in addition to, as we'll talk about with this virus, put the health and safety of all of us at risk, right? Yeah. Okay, great. So you first wanted to start talking about this virus and why there is so much uncertainty around it and what it is. And also, you had said to me that you were currently working on some research.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's important. Can you just talk about that so they know, especially why you have some qualifications with this specific virus?
Yeah. So basically, my husband is also a physician. He works in the hospital. And so when this all started to blow up, I got really deeply buried reading about the virus and reading the medical journals and the medical data that was coming out, and getting really super terrified about what my husband was going to have to deal with as we were watching what was unfolding in Italy. And back in March, I kind of put together this idea, since there's not enough testing available, to try to create a tool that would really identify people who are at risk based on symptoms, and then to sort of connect them to healthcare by administering that tool through technology. So through phone calls or text messages. Some of this stuff is already starting to happen with Facebook and apps. but none of those things actually connect people to healthcare. So that was kind of the part of it. So I sent that to my mentor, and she connected me to a research group in Colorado and Arizona.
And this is really taking the research of the symptoms of the COVID-19 virus.
Yeah, the symptoms and, the fact that there's this long incubation period where people don't have symptoms, and then, trying to connect people to care earlier, because some of the research shows, like in China, on average, it's about 2 to 14 days from when people are exposed to when they have symptoms. You probably all have that number. Most people, it's about 5 or 6 days. And then from when they get symptoms to when they start feeling short of breath, if they're going to feel short of breath, on average, that's been about 5 days. And then from when they get short of breath to when they present to the hospital, that was another 2 days. So there's this big window where people are having mild symptoms, and especially because now we're all being told to stay home, they're not necessarily connecting to care. And, increasingly we're seeing that there are different reasons that people may get really sick really quickly. And so to be able to find people who are having symptoms, and even if it's just a text each day, but to somehow be monitoring, how are you feeling today? To sort of see when things are starting to turn. That's kind of the idea.
Getting that data and then using that data to be a powerful, helpful tool to get people the kind of people that need the kind of care earlier, so that things could be more preventative. That's wonderful. Right. Excellent. Yeah. So if you are listening and you're already like emotionally triggered, like I know that this is a risky emotional episode for a lot of us. I personally, and I'm sure all actors, we're an emotional group of people. And we're a lot of us a social group of people. And just the general uncertainty of this virus as a whole, it is very triggering, I think, to a lot of people. And so if this is becoming overwhelming, I encourage you to, maybe stay in if you can, take care of yourself, but see if you can stay in, so that way we can really try to connect this virus and its uncertainty to productions. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the uncertainty. Go ahead.
And I just want to add, I do think there are a lot of reasons to be hopeful right now as well. So we can definitely talk about why this is scary and why people need to take it seriously, but also, there is, I think there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful right now as well.
Great. I'll take it. I'll take as much hope as you want to stir up. Okay, great. So let's talk about the uncertainty around this virus.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of reasons why there's so much confusion around this. We'll sort of break it down. Part of it is because the science itself is going to take time to be able to give us clear answers.
And let's talk about why that is, because I think a lot of people didn't pay attention in science class. I'm one of them. And so let's talk about why it takes a long time to have proven scientific results.
Yeah. So, and I've been thinking a lot about this. It's a big question, and I think a lot of people are frustrated with it. Science works by finding something that can be consistently measured and that is reproducible enough times that we can say, okay, this is predictable, that this is what's going to happen.
I love that. And that takes time for something to be consistently proven. And one of my favorite examples about this will seem like a sidebar, but everyone stay with me, is an example, a story that Neil deGrasse Tyson uses about a time he went to a coffee shop and he asked for whipped cream on his hot chocolate. And the waiter came back and brought some hot chocolate and it had no whipped cream on it. And this guy had no idea who Neil was. And so Neil said, "Where's my whipped cream?" And the server said, "It's on the bottom." And Neil said, "Unless you have defied the laws of physics, that's just completely impossible." And he said that the server, absolutely determined to prove him wrong, went back, got some whipped cream, and was like gonna show him that this is what happens. And of course the server was wrong and Neil was right. But what Neil's point in the story was, which I thought was so smart, was that this is science at its best, is actually a person who has a theory that they believe is proven, and then someone else who completely believes they're wrong, trying desperately to disprove this theory.
Yes.
And in that conflict, we actually get the consistent results that we're looking for that make us go, okay, this is a proven scientific fact versus a hunch or a guess.
Right. And it's particularly murky because this is not physical science, it's social science. So, it's the difference between like gravity versus, how many people do we have to treat with a blood pressure medication in order to see a decreased rate of heart attacks?
Oh my God. So just so you know, I have no idea what you just said, but what I do get about what you just said is it seems so much bigger, because what I'm hearing about social sciences is that it takes a large number of test groups of people in order to get results, rather than like, let's drop a rock and let's drop the rock under all these conditions and check if the rock still falls.
Yes. And thank you. I have to remember to turn the
No, I want
down
you to
keep
your brain on, because I'm always the like translator, so it's good.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying in medicine that, basically a study may say something is true for a group of people, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be true for your one patient. So, it's important that we know what's true for the group of people, because the odds of it being true for your patient are going to be a lot higher if it's true for that group of people. But your patient could still be that one person that it's not true for.
So right now we have, I believe, scientific evidence based on data that if you have diabetes, you are at higher risk for complications.
Right.
And that is a group of people that we have numbers en masse to, at this moment, certify that there is some truth to that caution.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And in general, medicine works by decreasing the chance of something bad happening by using the things we have. And there are some treatments that we know work really, really, really well, like antibiotics to treat an infection. Certain infections that it's very, reliable that that's going to work. So that's part of it. Another part of it is that all of the early research on this came out of China, where there's a lot of reasons that is a little tricky, but so there are some concerns about how accurate some of that information is. But beyond that, China is a completely different place from the US. For example, there are not a lot of people of African ancestry or Latin American ancestry in China. And in the US, we're already finding that African Americans in particular seem to be at higher risk of getting and having severe illness. China is a completely different place from the US in terms of the population, the health problems that population has, the distribution of that population, the social and cultural values of that population, the way that the government functions, the access to healthcare. So there's all these things that when we're looking at research in China and the way that the disease plays out in China, we don't know for sure if it's going to be the same in the US.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other discussions about why there's so much uncertainty around it?
The other thing I would say is that public health by nature is kind of a thankless profession. Because, and Fauci had a quote about this recently, and I was going to write it down, but I didn't get a chance to, where he basically says, if we do everything right, there will not be a lot of cases. And that is going to make people think that we overreacted. So it's really easy to kind of look at things right now and be like, well, what was all the fuss about? Like, New York City had a big problem, but like the rest of the country seems to be doing okay. Was it really worth it? And we won't really know the answer to that question for a little while until we sort of slowly do start to reopen and see how this disease is really behaving.
Yeah, I really feel that this is a lesson I have gotten again and again. I feel even and especially within our own profession as actors, I think of all of the actors who've come before me in the union even to fight for performers' rights, to fight for performers' safety, for fair pay. And that if they do it really, really well, that then the generation coming after them will sort of just doesn't know that that was ever really a problem.
Right.
And takes the solution for granted because they never knew the problem to exist in the first place. So
Right.
I want to, thank you to your husband and thank you to yourself and all of the healthcare professionals that are working. I can't even, I just think of the people in New York and I just hang my head for them. I'm so heartbroken for once again for that city, that community, and so grateful to everyone who's coming together to find solutions and to have some health and wellness as soon as possible for everyone.
Yeah.
But wait, Francesca, wait, you guys check out our Instagram. She's gorgeous. I have to interrupt you.
And now it's time for Shit You Don't Know About Your Recession.
This Shit You Don't Know About Your Recession is brought to you by Brad Greenquist. You guys know that I love Brad. I recommend Brad very highly. Falk Henschel, who was just in the last episode and who's done many episodes with Audrey Helps Actors, is a longtime student at Brad Greenquist. He is currently doing tons of private coaching via Zoom, the internets. He's really incredible. If you're somebody who really thinks the idea of movement in camera and like really what I would call like an actual on-camera technique in the terms of how you sit, how you look, how you turn your head, how you move forward, move back, all those sorts of things to help pull focus to a certain moment, to help bring maybe some levity to a moment. That's really something he is a complete master in, and I so recommend him for anyone who's really looking at refining or even educating themselves on any of those skills. Now is a fantastic time to be working with somebody like that. That's something that's really easily done over something like Zoom because it's active and he's literally seeing you on camera and can help you work with those sorts of skills over the internets. So he is a working actor. He's been working for decades. You can check out his resume. He has credit after credit after credit. He does tons of movies, tons of television, tons of commercials. He's consistently working and has for his entire life. Actor scenes are filmed with professional cameras and lighting when you go and take his class after this thing is over. If you want to go and take his class is on the West Side, you guys, for those of you living in Los Angeles and want to see him after the quarantine is over, he is on the West Side. West Side actors, I'm here to tell you, you have an excellent teacher who's on the West Side, so you don't have to drive all the way to fucking North Hollywood at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, because that bites. Okay, so you can find all the information that you need at www.bradsclass.com. That's BRADSCLASS.com. I couldn't recommend him more highly. I think he's a fantastic investment, now or ever. All right, so let's go to shit you don't know about this recession. All right, so I'm going to talk to you guys about this recession that we're entering into. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to get through it. The first thing I want to talk about is the Actors Fund. I want everybody to go to the actorsfund.org, www.actorsfund.org. You do not, I repeat, you do not have to be a union member to take advantage of the Actors Fund. Also, the Actors Fund, not just for actors. It's literally their slogan, the Actors Fund, : not just for actors. So if you are living with a writer, a director, anyone in the industry who needs some help and some assistance at this time, please go on the Actors Fund. I personally am a member of the Actors Fund. It cost me $25. That doesn't mean anything except that I feel like I've given to the Actors Fund. That's all it means. I don't get any special privileges. It just means that I did that. The Actors Fund has been extremely essential to me during this time. They have been doing Zoom webinars about everything that you can imagine, like 2-3 times a week. They've been working with the top people in the fields in multiple states. They did an unemployment webinar on unemployment for New York. They did another one that was through California. They pair up with other unions, so not just SAG-AFTRA, but IATSE and DGA and WGA, and they're doing consistent webinars on mental health, on financial health, on what the entertainment industry is going to look like for the next couple of years by talking to people who are recession experts within the entertainment industry. Listen to me. Go to the Actors Fund, check it, sign up for emails, read the emails, listen to the webinars. There's so much information and it's free. I want you to know that the Actors Fund was started so long ago by actors who wanted to, it's like gonna make me cry, I'm gonna cry, by actors who wanted to care for other actors, realizing that things were hard for artists and really wanting to take care of each other. So I so recommend it. Please sign up. If you have the ability to donate, that's great. It is absolutely not a requirement. Please take advantage of their services.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Okay, so let's talk about why this is not the flu.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to talk a little bit about viruses and how viruses change, because I know there's some things that they're finding on the daily that they're like, and maybe this causes cardiac arrest in adolescents. And people are like, what the fuck is happening with this virus, right? Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in terms of why it's different from the flu, there's a couple pieces of that. And some of this is information that may change, and some of what we thought may have been really bad and why this virus was really bad initially, some of that may get a little bit better as we learn more about how the virus behaves. Okay. So by that, what I mean is initially in China, 17% of the people who were diagnosed with the disease died from it. Once they did the lockdown, that number went down to less than 1%, to 0.7%. And you may hear this being talked about as the case fatality rate. It's what percentage of people who we know have the disease die from it.
Right.
And that number for the flu is 0.01%. So, even at the low end in China, we were still looking at a virus that was 7 to 10 times more deadly than the flu, even when it was well controlled. Additionally, how infectious it is, how contagious it is, that's another question. So again, for the flu, that is about 1 to 2. And when it gets warm, and I'm talking seasonal flu, when it gets warm, that number drops down to 1, which basically means that one person will spread it to one person who will spread it to one person. And it's kind of a line.
Right.
With coronavirus, that number looks like it's more between 2 and 3.
And what I hear is it's not one person gives it to 2 to 3, but one person gives it to 2 to 3. And all of those 2 to 3 people give it to 2 to 3. And all of those people give it to 2 to 3. And that's why the exponential theory is so massive, right?
Exactly. Yep. And so both of those numbers, we're still learning what the true numbers are. The reason that the case fatality rate, the percentage of people dying, was so high initially in China, there are a lot of reasons why that might be. Part of it is because if a healthcare system is overwhelmed, people who might normally survive if they'd had all the appropriate treatments won't.
And that's what flattening the curve is about. Why we're in quarantine is to flatten that curve.
Yes.
Right. Not to overwhelm the healthcare system.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And sorry, let me just add one other thing. The other reason this is worse than the flu is because about 40% of the population gets vaccinated against the flu each year. And that means that if somebody does have the flu, there's a 50% chance, like they may or may not be exposed to another person who is immune to it. So that puts up, that's, this whole theory of herd immunity that's floating around right now. If enough people are immune to a thing, then the people who do have it are less likely to be able to spread it because they're going to keep interacting with people who are already immune to it.
It has no power here.
Right.
Excellent. Okay, I love it. Okay, so tell me about, in general, like what a virus is, because I think there's a lot of confusion and lack of clarity why a virus is hard to treat versus like a bacterial infection, which we can treat with antibiotics, right?
Yeah. Basically, a bacteria has a whole bunch of different, we would say, like little organelles, like, you know, like humans have a heart and a lung and all the lungs and all these other parts of our body that function. Bacteria have a bunch of little parts of their structure that helps them function.
Okay.
They're bigger and they're more complicated.
Okay.
Viruses are really much more simple. They're mostly genetic material with like the stuff that they need to be able to replicate. And then there's like a coating around them that, you know, to protect them, and so they can bind to the things that they're going to infect.
Interesting.
So they're harder to treat because there's less stuff to target. Like a more complicated organism, there's more things for us to be looking at that we can try to aim a medicine at. Because they're simpler, they can one small change can make a big difference in how they behave. We consider bacteria to be alive, and viruses are like not really alive. They're sort of in this other kind of in between.
They're zombies.
And and bacteria, we have lots of healthy bacteria. Bacteria can be very helpful. We have them in our, you know, our gut and our mouth and all over our body, all over our skin. Viruses really only serve to infect things.
So let's talk about why testing is an issue.
There's a couple pieces to that as well.
Okay.
There are two main ways that we're looking at testing for this virus. The first is what's called PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. And that is what most people are getting right now when they're getting tested. That is the swab that goes way up your nose or in the back of your throat, or for some places they're doing spit. That is looking for the genetic material of the virus.
Okay.
And the problem is that a lot of people are getting what we call false negatives. So depending on when they're tested and how the test is done, they may get a negative result saying that they don't have coronavirus when they actually do have it. So the tests are pretty good at telling us when we do have it, but right now a lot of the tests are not very good at telling us when we don't have it.
I see. So false negatives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of the recommendations say that if you do have symptoms, you should just, you know, isolate for 7 to 14 days, even if your test result is negative. Because the tests are not as reliable.
That's interesting. And that poses a problem if we're looking at testing to be something that gives us a reliable indication to get back to work.
Right. Yes.
So let's talk about that. So let's start bridging it to production resuming and what sort of health and safety things would need to be put in place for production to resume. And one thing that is talked about is testing. There's a few issues that I've heard with testing that perhaps you could read. So one of them is, you know, this false negative. That's an issue, right?
Yep.
And then availability to test is manufacturing, and cost availability to test is another issue. And in addition to our head doctor, Mr. Fauci, he has come out publicly and said that it is currently inconclusive that just because you have antibodies doesn't mean that you can't contract the virus again. So one thing that people are saying in terms of going back to work, that if you test positive for the antibodies, meaning you've already had it and it's positive that you've had it, that perhaps you can be cleared to go back to work, except we aren't at this moment sure that means you can't be reinfected.
Right. So in tying this then, just to also finish up about testing.
Yes.
So the diagnostic test that I was just describing, that's one type of test. And the other one is the one that you're describing, which is the antibody test. The antibody test would be blood tests, which is what places are starting to roll out. And antibodies are basically the little proteins that our body makes to help fight infection. So there's the problem that you're describing of not knowing for sure if the antibodies that we test for, and just in general, of having antibodies makes you immune. But there's also the fact that the FDA has not been regulating the development of these tests.
Oh God.
So there was something like 90 different companies the last time I looked that were making the tests. And they did this because they were trying to get people.
She's laughing, you guys, because I'm holding my face together because I'm just like so horrified. I understand why they did it. They wanted to get like people to start competing and like, just get it going so that way we can find the answer. But God help us.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's great news.
I did see something recently saying that they were backing off on that. So that
good.
may be something that they're going to get back on top of. But it meant that there have been a lot of tests that have been rolled out that haven't had the usual level of oversight to make sure that they're working correctly and that they're working well.
Great. That sounds like super awesome.
Yes.
So,
and there's also shortages for testing. So
all
there's
tests.
Everything. Yeah. So initially there were not enough what we call reagents, the chemicals that we use to run the tests. The last thing I saw was that there were shortages of the actual swabs, the Q-tips that we do for the diagnostic tests. So all of this is
to say,
frustrating.
Frustrating. And to say, for health and safety as a priority to our industry, I think it's clear to me that I want people to have an understanding that it's going to be a minute.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about sets and let's talk about the sort of complications and contact of sets. I just sent you an article on Variety. I don't know if you had a chance to look on that. There were a couple of film production companies, and they made it very clear. They're like, this is not our solution. We're literally just batting around ideas. We're just batting them around. It basically requires a self-quarantining period of 14 days in a very controlled way, managed by the production. For cast and crew, these are really small scale operations. Cast that would be very small, crew that would be very small, tiers of like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 in terms of like who has contact with who. I will go ahead and post this article in the show notes so that people can see it. There's a really interesting thing that I read on online. Somebody made a joke about, what's called the second wave, right? So in all like pandemics of history, all plagues, the second wave is something that we're currently really concerned about as a world, right? And all the rush to get back to production and get back to work. Somebody made a joke of, I've owned enough gaming systems to know that you never buy the first new one out. You always wait until it's been purchased by all the eager beavers, and then they find all the bugs in it, and then they do the second model, and that's the one that you purchase. And I feel personally, that's how I feel about a lot of this.
I think, like you said, it's going to be a minute. I think there are a lot of opportunities to make art that is reflecting people's circumstances right now, leaving the traditional production format and style aside for a moment.
Well, I can speak to that. I mean, a lot of the commercial opportunities happening right now are for actors who live with filmmakers. So that the filmmaker can go ahead and film somebody that they're in quarantine with. Right. Doing some sort of activity. But in terms of what I would call really larger scale, back to normal production of a set of even, I think, a small cast and crew, which would be 30 to 50 people.
Yeah, I think, in that article, they talked about doing, like you said, the quarantine and testing. And one question that I had in reading that was, what are they going to do if somebody has a positive test?
That's part of it too. Exactly. If somebody has a positive test suddenly, right? Then all of production essentially has to shut down.
Right.
And one thing that, I'm talking with my producer friends about is production insurance. Another thing that was brought up that I had sent you, the Actors Fund had done a really interesting talk about getting back to work and in the entertainment industry, and not just actors, but they were talking to orchestra members and all sorts of people. They had said, another consideration is ageism, prejudice for anyone who is autoimmune compromised, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that as medicine and public health get better at figuring out how to prevent and treat the disease, which is happening, we're learning so much more, and those things are changing very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that within even a few months, there's going to be a lot more that we know and ways that we can take care of it that we currently can't do. And the testing is going to get a lot more
Mm-hmm.
accurate. All of that is going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when those things as those things improve, the risks of production are going to get lower,
Mm-hmm.
not go away, but get lower.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say that.
Well, that's good. I mean, that to me is maybe what you're talking about in terms of like the side of hope that
Yes.
is coming, is that because we don't have enough data, there is a lot that's still to be determined.
Yes.
But wait, Francesca, wait, you guys check out our Instagram. She's gorgeous. I have to interrupt you.
And now it's time for Shit You Don't Know About Your Recession.
This next Shit You Don't Know About Your Recession is brought to you by Whitney Euland. She is an actor who believes that your mental and spiritual health should be your top priority, because of course it should be. Whitney is a life coach dedicated to helping actors get unstuck from the crazy hustle of our profession. She helps actors who feel like they're doing everything right but still feel stuck at the whim of the industry, and it's an industry that often feels like it doesn't want us or care about us. So she just helps you sort of work through that. So Whitney has this video series that she's recorded. This video set series was recorded pre-COVID-19. But that said, I do think it has a lot of great insights into like your mental blocks and sort of patterns of thinking that can keep us stuck and keep us in unhelpful cycles. And I think now is a really good time for many of us to really be working on our mental health, obviously. Look at a lot of the beliefs and things that are challenging us and keeping us from growing. I think that that's a real thing that I see happen to a lot of actors. And I love Milton Casellas, my previous teacher, used to always say, the work on the actors, the work on the self. So she offers this series. It's a exclusive bundle for the Audrey Helps Actors listeners called Getting Unstuck in 2020 Power Pack, which includes the following amazing resources. The Getting Unstuck course, it's Whitney's flagship online course, which includes a series of downloadable worksheets designed to help you face your mental blocks head on. That sounds just really kind of great right now, right? It's like just to like listen to something, hear about your mental blocks, like get a worksheet and then fill it out. Like that sounds like I could do that. You'll also get 6 months of free group coaching sessions with Whitney Euland, so that's nice. And this bundle is usually $400, and I was like, hey girl, like $400 is too much for my listeners, so I need you to help me out. And she was like, okay. So she is doing a whopping 75% off for the entire bundle by using the redemption code Audrey75. So Audrey75. That said, there are only 100 redemptions available, so be sure to purchase yours ASAP. She is at AbundantArtistCoaching.com. Again, that's AbundantArtistCoaching.com. Promo code Audrey75 for 75% off. Take care of your mental health, you guys. I think that's really important.
I wanted to just say something briefly about masks. You have to cover your nose, mouth, and chin for them to work. I see a lot of people wearing a mask, but with their nose uncovered, which defeats the purpose of wearing a mask. And if you do cough or sneeze, you still need to cover your mouth with your arm, even with your mask on. Don't touch the mask once you put it on, because we know it gets contaminated, like if you're at the grocery store. So instead, put it on and take it off by holding just the ear loops and then throw it away or into the laundry when you get home. And if you're using reusable masks, you do need to change and wash it just like you do your underwear. So like at least daily. And then finally, if you're young and healthy, please consider donating any extra surgical and N95 masks to healthcare workers. There are hospital systems and individual providers around the country that are having major shortages right now, especially in underserved areas, which is very unsafe. There's a group online. You can go to www.getusppe.org if you are interested in doing that. And I guess I would just end by saying, we're learning a lot about COVID-19 every day. Some of it is hopeful, a lot of it is really useful, and some of it is still very scary. Right now, 2,000 Americans are dying every day from this virus. In the next 1 to 2 months, we're going to know a lot more and hopefully have more access to and also just have in general better treatments and testing so we can save more lives and then safely reopen the economy, even just part way. But we're probably going to need to have partial lockdowns in the future. So please wash your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds. Regularly, disinfect surfaces in your home that are frequently touched, like handles and knobs, and stay home right now. When you do have to go out, wear your cloth masks in crowded places and stay 6 feet away from other people. But please also do reach out and stay connected to the people that you love. And just stay safe, you guys.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Let me ask you, as an actress and as a physician, what would things have to look like for you as a woman, wife, mother, actress to feel comfortable returning to a professional set?
That is a good question. I have to think about that because I haven't thought about that yet.
Yeah. What's hard for me is, as an actor, I do feel that I support people. I have reps who I support financially. I have, my family, my husband, myself, our dogs. I try to keep them alive, and it's like, and so there feels like that pressure is easy to succumb to. And just the general desire an actor has to work and to be working. And that if an opportunity came along for a nice paying job, and it was in a circumstance where I was being told, it's been union approved, and, the green light is happening for the union, I think nothing less than that would be optimal for me. So I think that's harder for non-union actors. Part of what is happening right now in terms of our union leaders looking for clarity is and I'm not just talking SAG-AFTRA, but the DGA, the Producers Guild, the Writers Guild, the Teamsters Union, all of us are looking to our union leaders, and our union leaders are looking to OSHA, who sets the safety and health standards. And OSHA at the moment has been 100% silent, just completely silent. So so that leads all of the union leaders to sort of look and guess. And I think that's how you end up with plans like this production company who's just sort of internally working with other producers, just sort of to create systems that they're going back and forth of like, what about this? And how about that? And what about that? But I think until we get some sort of guidelines really from OSHA, I can't imagine what it would look like for the unions as a whole, because there are brother and sister unions, right? Brother and sister unions. There are sister unions to give a green light to going back to work. I feel lucky in that I do feel that my representation, if I were to say, I don't feel comfortable going back to work at this time, I don't feel we have enough information, and I don't feel it's safe. That would not be held against me, which is great. I would be supported in that choice and that decision. But I know that for, I would say most actors, that's maybe not true.
Yeah.
that I'm in the minority in that.
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone, similar maybe to how we have the episode with Mia, where we talk about boundaries in terms of our bodies,
Yes.
and having that discussion ahead of time. Maybe now is a really great time to figure out your boundaries with regards to going back to work and having that conversation perhaps with your family, with your spouse or significant other, and perhaps also with your representation, and head that conversation up at the pass before it becomes an issue of you being in a predicament where you feel you have to disappoint somebody or cause a hassle that might put pressure on you to take work that you don't feel safe taking.
Yeah, I was thinking about your question, and I do think every individual is going to have a different set of criteria. And so I think what you're saying is absolutely the right thing that we all need to think about right now, where our lines are for that. I think for me, a lot of it is going to have to do with, over the next month or two, what we learn about how this virus really behaves. Like I was saying, if it turns out that it is, I don't want to paint an overly rosy picture.
Right. Yes.
But like best case scenario.
Yeah. Right.
If it turns out that a lot of people have already been exposed and it's not as deadly as we thought it was, and most people are asymptomatic, that would make me a little bit more comfortable going back to work a few months from now, I think, but that's definitely like a big best case scenario, and the odds are high that that's not what's going to be happening. There's still going to be a lot of people getting very severely sick from it,
and especially that would happen in the next couple of months. That we have to gather so much data to know that that's scientifically true.
Right.
And I don't know that that's going to happen in a couple of months.
I will say that the scientific community right now is bananas, unlike anything I've ever seen before. I mean, the amount of new research that is coming out every day is wonderful. There's also some concern because it's coming out so quickly, and a lot of it is being posted before it's been what we call peer reviewed. So things are getting into the headlines or getting into the news before it's really been critiqued. And usually when things are published, it's after a bunch of experts in the field have had a chance to read it and really look at the way that the study was done, look at the way that the statistics were done, and to sort of determine whether they think that it's, what they've concluded matches with what the results are.
Right. That's right.
And that is happening in some places, but there's a lot of stuff that's
sort of getting leaked
before it happened.
That's right.
When you see that it says this is published but not yet peer reviewed, that's what it means. And so the standard of what is being published right now is a lot lower than normal. And there's pros and cons to that, because it's sort of this free access to information, but sometimes things may get kind of picked up and taken as true before it's really been, and then later we look at it and say, actually, the way they did this was not a good study. And so those results we can't really trust.
Yeah, but then they're already out in the headlines and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And people are already making choices based on it. I do think that what was laid out in that Variety article was a really reasonable way. I mean, reasonable in the time of COVID and what we know right now, that was a pretty reasonable approach.
Okay.
There is the question of what happens if someone has a positive test. And like, when are they doing the testing? Are they doing it before they quarantine? And if you get a positive test, then they pick somebody else who doesn't have a positive test, and like, what would that mean?
Yeah.
Or do they do it after quarantine?
And then do you get compensated, because like if somebody books you out for 2 weeks during quarantine, because you should be paid for your 2-week quarantine, right?
Right.
And then paid for your filming. And then if you were tested negative on day 1 of quarantine, but then on day 7, you test positive, then do you get paid for the whole thing?
Right.
Even if they replace you, right? Because as you said, also what doesn't work for me about that is that if the tests are are giving false negatives, then the test, until we have tests that are 100% reliable and accurate, then none of the testing matters to me.
No test will ever be 100% reliable.
Okay.
That's just the nature of how tests are.
Okay.
You kind of have to either have more false positives or more false negatives.
I see.
You have to kind of choose one or the other.
Interesting.
So it depends on what the purpose of the test is. And it also depends on what how many people in the population have the test determines how good the test is.
Right. And so that to me would be very important, you know, where we're talking about then I guess like a margin of error. Is it something that we're talking about? And so to me, there would have to be like a margin of error that was very low so that I believe that the efficacy of the test was valid. Is that a word? Efficacy of the test? Okay, great. Sounds scientific there. Okay, good. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, then I will wrap up. Anything else you want to say?
Mental health is obviously a huge thing right now. And there are services online right now. There's something called 7 Cups where you can just text for free with a sort of peer-to-peer type of counseling. There's a crisis text line where you can text with somebody if you're having any sort of emotional crisis. Obviously, there's also suicide hotlines. But I really, some of the things that can help with mental health, one of the biggest things right now is trying to create a routine. And I know that that's hard, but just gentle things. And I did this with my daughter, right? Like she was bouncing off the walls being trapped at home. And so I was like, okay, well, she needs like every morning at about 10:30, we're going to go sit outside for half an hour. And then, and then her nap is at noon. And then at like 3 o'clock, I'm going to take her for a walk. And it absolutely sort of just helped kind of create a little bit more serenity in both of our lives. And I've read some things talking about like astronauts and people in the military, soldiers, right? People who are in a submarine for 9 months at a time. And routine is a really important part of sort of helping yourself feel a little bit more well right now. That being said, when we go off our routine or we do something that we know is sort of an indulgence that we feel whatever bad about afterwards, like not beating ourselves up about that and just sort of being like, every reaction is really okay. As long as you're not putting other people at danger, every reaction is appropriate right now.
That's right.
I really do think people are having kind of a grief response to what's happened. We've lost something we didn't even know we could lose. And we don't know if or when we're ever going to get it back. And that's scary. And it's okay to be angry, sad, detached, reading constantly, like all of those things are understandable reactions. Trying to limit our access to news, I think, is also important right now. So much of what drives me crazy is that all of the websites that talk about this, all of the media, the colors are all red, right? And like we need that. We need to be scared when this is starting to sort of get people to pay attention.
Right, yes.
But now for me, I'm like, I'm so tired of seeing that red and black virus image everywhere I look. It immediately makes me anxious. And that makes it harder for me to hear or read what I need to hear or read because, I'm all activated.
Yes.
So
yeah, I so agree.
So limiting your intake of news is helpful. Connecting to people, obviously, in the ways that we can through all the social media. I mean, that's the one good thing about this happening now is that there's a million ways we can connect with people using technology. And the last thing I would just say is that if you have a physical health issue that you're concerned about, please call your doctor because a lot of people have been staying away from healthcare because they're scared. And most practices are still functioning in some way. They are either still seeing people in person with various, protocols in place to keep things clean and safe, or they've moved to phone or video visits. And so one of my biggest concerns is that people who have problems like high blood pressure or diabetes or other chronic issues are not going to go to the doctor because they're afraid of
Overwhelming.
And, you know, these things that may put them at higher risk for heart attack or other severe complications aren't going to get taken care of now when they could prevent those other problems. So a lot of clinics are still taking care of patients. So please call your doctor if you're not feeling well.
I think that's such great advice, because I think that all of us took it all very seriously, as we should have, to not overwhelm the healthcare system. But that if you have a health condition that you are concerned about, to reach out, and also for your mental health as well. You know, that goes both ways. If you're sitting there concerned about your physical health, that is also going to spiral you in your mental health, and the two can be triggering to many people. So just self-care, I think, is a continual necessity.
Yes.
Well, I so appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for reaching out.
My pleasure.
And thank you to your family for giving us your time to, I think this is going to be really great for people.
Good. I hope so.
I was like nervous about doing something about COVID because I feel like we're also overwhelmed, but I'm getting so many people asking about coming back to work that I'm just like, we need to do something so people understand like what we're really up against. Okay. Well, my love to you, my love to your family. We'll keep in touch via email, and this is going to air on Monday. So get ready. Okay. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
You too. Bye, honey. Special thanks to Francesca Decker. That was so generous of you. You know, she is a mom and a wife and a doctor and an actress. I mean, she's so stunning. Really check out her Instagram. And I just thought that was such a wonderful interview that brought a lot of clarity to me. So I hope it brought a lot of clarity to all of you. Big thanks to my executive producer and husband, still so handsome, you guys, Jesse Lumen, the one, the only, the rock star. Show music is brought to you by Ari De Niro, and our theme song assistance is still brought to you by Aalok Mehta and 108 Hill. All right, I'll see you next time. Don't forget your towel.